coming to 2025, what is currently the most exciting thing about Bitcoin, and what maybe also has changed since 2020 for you in Bitcoin?
So yeah, for me, I think it's like every cycle has its own different story and things that are kind of out there. I guess if I'm sort of zooming out and looking at what's happening in these cycles, I can sort of loosely think of it like the 2017 cycle was ICOs and so on, as in that was kind of, at least in the alt land, that's kind of what was going on. Then in 2021, there was kind of all this like DeFi and NFTs and all this other stuff. And it seems this time around in, let's say, 2024, 2025, it seems to me more like it's the cycle of Bitcoin ETFs, Bitcoin treasury companies. This kind of thing is really big. But in a Bitcoin specific thing, of course, there's also a lot of work happening on things like the Lightning Network and just growth generally there. Things like what's happening in hardware wallets and Miniscript to make it accessible for people there. What's happening at, let's say, Lightning in terms of with Lightning to make the user experience better, and getting things like people having Bolt 12 and reusable human readable names, these kinds of things. So yeah, I think, and then even in the mining world, there's just, there are efforts being made to sort of help decentralize, as you know, things like Ocean and Demand Pool are out there. There's bit axes and things like this. There's just a lot of, I guess these are some of the things that are, I guess, on the conversation nowadays. People are talking about, well, what should be done about censorship? What should be done about the mining pool payout structures, FPPS versus the PPLNS and other forms, or things built based on that. So yeah, I think it's a mix of those things. But then, of course, at the same time, it's like what's happening in government and corporates, and of course, high net worth individuals. So I guess that's just kind of a flavoring of what I guess is on a lot of people's minds.
It's super interesting, this cycle. I talked like a few episodes ago with Danny from Coin Corner about that, because he brought up an interesting report. And he basically said, like, if you only look at retail, we're still not in a bull market. It seems like the bull market is just in the institutions, and also like Google Trends and a lot of other things kind of supporting that. Why do you think this is? I like just one small preface to that. I personally thought 100K will be a trigger point, and I was deadly wrong about that. Retail did not seem to care at all outside of the Bitcoin world. How do you look at retail is not really in the bull market, but institutions and nation states all of a sudden are really piling in?
Yeah, I think it sounds cliche, but it really is just early. Like, I think it's just that, think about when I was a noob in 2013, I just thought it was so obvious, right? Like, I was shouting it from the rooftops, and I was surprised that more people were just not like instantly getting it. Now, I had a few friends who followed me into it, and they were very thankful for that, but a lot of them didn't. And it just took time. It just takes time. Think about how much of a shift it takes to really start thinking, okay, I'm actually going to start using this money that's outside of the state and all of these things. I think for a lot of people, it's a big lift. And I think maybe in the earlier years, we kind of hit this saturation point in terms of the more libertarian, cypherpunk minded people. And so now the new people coming in are not so libertarian or cypherpunk or cryptography or any they're not so into any of those things. And so that's been one thing that's maybe a little surprising to me, is just how, as an example, like if you go to mempool.space, it's quite low right now. There's not that much activity going on. I think it's because ETFs and Bitcoin treasury companies like Strategy and MetaPlanet and so on, that's where a lot of the new people are coming, at least for now. So I think that's why, and I think that may come later. Like, we may get the kind of retail sort of frenzy later on, maybe later this year or early next year. I still think it's coming, but I guess the way I'm seeing it now is institutions and let's say the people who are buying ETFs, they have a lot of money as well. And so, and I think the other thing is, if I think about it this way, now, of course, from the decentralization point of view, of course, not your keys, not your coins, always and forever. But I think there are a lot of people for who, in past cycles, they would have gone to, let's say, Coinbase or Binance or whatever, or BitMEX, maybe not BitMEX, but Coinbase and these others and Gemini and whatever. Whereas now I think a lot of those people are going to, let's say, the ETFs and Bitcoin treasury companies. So it could also be that even smaller, quote unquote, retail is just buying on their fiat stockbroking terminal or app. So it could be that too. So I think I'm trying to zoom out and stay focused on and understanding what's happening. And I think there are times where maybe we can end up being caught up fighting the battles of the past, as an example. So now, of course, as to bring it to again reiterate, not your keys, not your coins. And I think there will be people who need to learn that lesson the hard way. But I think we are maybe a little ways off from that, from kind of the next kind of FTX style event. Maybe that happens. Who knows? But I think that's why there's an importance to kind of teach people those things like, hey, not your keys, not your coins, or hey, learn to run your own Bitcoin node, or hey, use your own hardware, and this kind of use the tools, learn how to use it for yourself. So I think those are all there. But we also can't deny that for a lot of people that they just find it more convenient, right? They may not be as, let's say, cypherpunk or libertarian minded, and for them, they're just happy to just buy it on a terminal, and that's it, on a stockbroking sort of terminal or interface.
Yeah, makes me really think of how adoption will actually grow, because sometimes we have this belief, and I'm not sure if it actually works out like that everyone will understand Bitcoin to a certain degree. I actually think that there will be a small group of people that actually understand Bitcoin, and the other ones are just using it the same way as in internet adoption. Not everyone really understood what a TCP/IP protocol is and the technical technicalities, but everyone likes to use Facebook and WhatsApp and on all those applications on top of the internet layer. And even when I see now in my family, there are family members that are orange pilled that really understand it, but then there are family members that okay, I think Robin gets it. I don't understand Bitcoin, but I will buy some just in case I don't miss out if he gets wealthy from it. And there's like this group things of it. So I'm wondering a lot of how many people do we even need to really orange pill, and how many people will just follow the crowd when the Bitcoin price is going up and the Bitcoin gets integrated in the fiat systems, and those kind of adoption questions.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know if there's any really good answer to it, but I think I'm just recognizing that I think a lot of people will get onboarded in custodial ways. Now, that may be triggering or annoying to us because we would like them to learn the self-custodial way. But another way to think of it is just, look, there were only so many people who were going to do it that way. A lot of people will just do it in a fiat custodial way. Of course, it still matters to teach enough people to do this, because I think in some sense, more people knowing how to self-custody, it acts as a check, right? It acts as a check against the system. It acts as a check against fractional reserve, these kinds of practices. So in that sense, yeah, it still matters to teach people about these things and talk about them and make them important so that people understand, or at least help make people understand the importance of doing them. But yeah, what percent of people coming in do we need to teach that? I don't really know. I think the important thing though is that when you want to self custody, people can do that. And I mean, who knows? Maybe that prices people out over time. Like maybe over time, maybe not now, but maybe 10 years from now, maybe there will be people who are priced out. But we'll see. I mean, some of that also depends on like what other technology we get. Do we end up having some other scaling technique or efficiency technique that allows more people to use Bitcoin in a self-custodial way? I think it's kind of it's an open question for now. But I think I would say the way I'm sort of looking at it is I think there used to be a lot of people doing like on-chain transactions, and now it's sort of like a lot of those people have moved to either using Lightning or maybe they're using custodial things like custodial Lightning and so on. Because that, I think that to me explains why there's very little on-chain transactions, at least right now. And maybe when retail shows up, and maybe when some more of those people have learned to actually withdraw and do self custody, then we'll start to see a pickup again. But maybe it's just going to be this kind of cycles, kind of pendulum swinging thing there, even in terms of on-chain transactions.
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating. I just paid someone yesterday with Bitcoin. It was, I think, $500, and I paid 70 cents for the transaction, which is nothing. All the fees on the fiat rails would have been, I think, 3 or 4 euros for the same transactions, and it's kind of amazing. And I love how Bob Burnett puts it, like we are now driving in a Rolls Royce, and it won't be forever that cheap to drive in a Rolls Royce on the main layer. We have to get used to the upper layer things. It's an interesting time to be alive. Bitcoin price is quite high for the low retail interest, I feel like, and also the importance of running your own node and self custody is extremely important. But I just see like it's really hard to get that through to people. I made a poll last time, how many people do self custody that watch my channel, and it's not even half. And I preach self custody almost in every episode. And then if you ask like, wait, if you do self custody, are you also running your own full node? Then most people drop out. It's
right. That's like another big filter level. Yeah.
It's super important. Can you make the case for people that maybe are listening now and maybe don't have self custody or only have self custody and not run their own full node? Why they should care about that, especially when they are so early in that revolution?
Well, fundamentally, it comes down to you having possession of your own coins rather than leaving them with somebody else, right? Like the analogy might be, it's if you believe in, let's say, gun rights, but you leave your gun locked up at the police station nearby instead of, having it available to yourself. Now, I don't know, maybe in some audience that might be a controversial kind of argument or statement, but I mean, the point is more just that if you really value this thing and you really want to make sure you still have control of it, then I think it benefits you to learn. Now, maybe for some, and it could be that you don't necessarily have to self-custody 100% of your stack. Maybe if you are a trader, maybe you have to leave some of it on another platform somewhere, or maybe you're using, I don't know, who knows, if you're doing like a loan thing or whatever. But hopefully that's only a small percent of your overall holding and that you're keeping most of it in your self-custody, so that way you're not running the risk of getting Mt. Goxed or FTXed or these kinds of things. So I think that's one thing. Now, people could argue, okay, look, that was the past, and now that's not as much of a risk now. I mean, who knows? I think people will just kind of have to learn these lessons over and over again. So that's one thing on the holding your own keys side of it. On the running your own Bitcoin node part of it, I think that part of it is more about making sure that you are being self-sovereign as a Bitcoin user. You are verifying the transactions. You are verifying that you hold those coins. You're not waiting for somebody else that could be lying to you about that. So when you connect, let's say, your cold card with Sparrow Wallet and you point that Sparrow Wallet to your own Bitcoin node, it gives you just a much stronger level of assurance that, yes, you really have coins. Nobody's lying to you about that. You got sent those coins correctly and validly. So I think that's kind of, in a nutshell, that's the key thing. It's hard to impress that upon somebody who is not that focused on that, because maybe they've got their coins on whatever iBit or whatever other custodial form of Bitcoin. And so, yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. But at the same time, I do recognize that these are oftentimes the first touch point for people, right? That may be the first coin, like the first coins people might have held before historically might have been on custodial exchanges, like the Coinbases of the world and so on and others out there. And then over time, it might have, once that number rises, I think, let me put it this way for listeners, if you are holding coins in some kind of custodial form, it could also be that maybe this is not a large percent of your net worth, or it's not a meaningful number for you. And as that number rises, right, as NGU, as number goes up, it'll start to become more important to you. And then you'll seek out ways to do self-custody. And for a lot of people, they might be scared if it's their first time. So you can sort of start with a small amount and these kinds of things. These are ways to ease that transition. But I mean, that is in a nutshell why you should think about holding your own keys and running your own node. And importantly, not just running your node, but connecting it with your wallet so that you are actually using it as part of the transaction. So that's the reason why.
Yeah, there's so many interesting things in there. So most Bitcoiners don't have like 50% or 100% of their savings in Bitcoin. Most of them have just like a small portion. When you look in your own circles, maybe it's relatable. But you mentioned something interesting, the loan thing, this idea of borrowing against the Bitcoin. I think that's what you're referring to. This gets more and more popular. How do you stand on that to get not yield, but get fiat liquidity to pay for things without selling them?
So, I mean, in a sense, you can think of it as BTC yield at the personal level. It is theoretical. But now, that said, I last cycle around was quite cautious on this. I did a podcast with Andy Edstrom, and I think we actually got lucky with the timing, but we basically said, like, don't get wrecked on these things. And pretty soon after that, like, a bunch of these things all got wrecked, right? Like, that kind of around that time, pretty soon after that, it was like BlockFi got wrecked and all these various lending platforms, and Celsius went down and 3 Arrows Capital went down, and later in that cycle, FTX went down in that bear market. So there's always a risk, but I think I'm not opposed to people doing it full stop, right? There are these services, things like, Unchained Capital, Let-In, Hodl. I think Bitfinex has a borrow thing. I know there's one called Firefish. There's that Lava one as well. So there's a few of these out there, and that's just the ones I can think of at the top of my head. I'm sure there's many others, but I'm not opposed to people who are doing it, but I'd make these few important cautions. One, make sure you're managing your risk by making it a small portion of, your overall stack. Ideally, if you have income that you are using to pay that, then that can help you also. And yeah, I just think monitoring sort of what's happening there and understanding what are, let's say, the liquidation ratios and levels. So I think those are important things to think about. I wouldn't necessarily say it's for everybody. Some people, they just have a blanket no debt position, and totally fair enough. I personally, I hold zero debt, at least right now. I haven't engaged in some of these now. But I'm not opposed to it. I think if you were very, very cautious and very judicious about it, I'm not opposed to people using those things. But I would just say be very conservative in how you do that, and be like, you should do up a spreadsheet and calculate out some different levels and some different numbers, and okay, make sure it's below a certain percentage of your stack, such that you are not levering up too high, too heavily. But I think it can make sense if you are kind of very prudent about it and doing very small levels of leverage. But when I say that, I should also caveat, I think there are people who are not good at this kind of thing, and they should just totally avoid it, because for them, they may not be good at being financially prudent about these things, about making sure things are within safe, very low levels as a percent of your overall stack. And maybe you're better off, most people, it's like with trading. I believe probably 99% of people who try trading will lose. So, maybe it's not quite that bad, but it's one of those things where it's you need to understand what you're doing before you really do that. And for many people, the safe The safe, obvious thing is just, live within your means, stack sats, ideally into your own hardware wallet or multi-sig, and just do that for a long enough period of time, 5 to 10 years. And then from then on, you generally will be in a good position, because by then you've been saving, that'll be quite, pretty good for you. That's how I'm thinking about it. So yeah, short summary. I'm not totally against it, but I'm just I would say, be very cautious and conservative about it if you engage in that.